They said I wasn't family anymore, that I had no right to attend my father's will reading, so I didn't argue. I just walked in with the corporate charter in my name. My name is Elena Foster. I'm 35 years old. I run my own investment firm in Sydney, and for the past 6 years, my name has been erased from every family gathering, business document, and Christmas card. The Foster name, once mine, had become a scar I was supposed to forget. But here's the thing about legacies. You don't get to rewrite them just because they make you uncomfortable. 6 years ago, I had a fallout with my father, Gregory Foster, the man who built Foster and Vale Holdings from nothing, a titan in real estate, a master negotiator, and a brutal perfectionist. He was the kind of man who respected contracts more than people, including his own daughter. Our fight wasn't about money. Not really. It was about control. I wanted to launch a socially conscious housing division, sustainable, affordable, forward-thinking. He called it hippie nonsense, said I was soft, said I'd ruin the brand. So I walked away, not just from the company, but from the family. He cut me off like I never existed. And honestly, I didn't try to get back in. I built my own company. I earned every client, every deal, every sleepless night. I didn't just survive, I thrived. But I never forgot. When my father died last month, I didn't expect to be in the will. What caught me off guard was the email forwarded to me, an accidental CC from my cousin's assistant, a scanned agenda for the will reading, and a list of authorized attendees. My name wasn't on it. Gregory Foster's only child, not invited to hear the end of his story. I stared at that list for a long time. Then I opened a drawer in my office and pulled out a folder I'd been quietly building for years. Inside was a document my father never knew existed, a legal transfer he'd signed 10 years ago, when I was still his heir apparent. A fallback plan. It gave me voting rights on a dormant shell company, one he forgot about, one that just happened to own 12% of Foster and Vale Holdings. It took 3 weeks of paperwork, some very expensive lawyers, a lot of silence. But when the day of the will reading arrived, I didn't walk in as a grieving daughter. I walked in as a shareholder. The room fell silent when I opened the boardroom doors. My uncle blanched. My cousin dropped her pen. The attorney barely looked up. "Elena, this is a private family matter," my aunt hissed. I dropped the charter on the table. "This is a corporate matter," I said. They couldn't throw me out. Legally, I was a stakeholder. I had every right to be there, and they knew it. The attorney adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and started reading. Gregory Foster had left the bulk of his fortune to the company, not the family, not his wife, not his siblings, the company. And in the event of leadership uncertainty, control would pass to the board, of which I was now a voting member. My father didn't forgive me. He didn't mention me in the will, but he didn't erase me as thoroughly as he thought he had. The irony? In trying to lock me out, he handed me the key. The reading went on for an hour. Every clause felt like a chess move from beyond the grave. Gregory had always played the long game. And maybe, deep down, he knew I was the only one still playing at his level. After it ended, no one said a word to me. They avoided my eyes, avoided the truth. I walked out just as quietly as I walked in. But this time, I wasn't alone. I had leverage. I had legacy. And most importantly, I had a choice. I could dismantle Foster and Vale, liquidate the shares, cut ties completely, and let them rot in their entitled little kingdom. Or I could do what I always wanted, reshape the empire. From the inside. My father built this house, brick by brick, deal by deal. But it's my turn to decide what stays and what burns. And I didn't need an invitation to claim what was already mine. I was 27 when I made the pitch that burned my bridges. We were sitting in the glass boardroom on the 47th floor of the Foster and Vale building. The skyline behind us looked like opportunity. I thought that meant something. I had spent 6 months analyzing the company's underperforming suburban assets, cookie-cutter properties, bleeding money, and relevance. My proposal was bold, but not reckless. Convert them into sustainable mixed-use housing communities. Solar-ready rooftops, energy-efficient systems, green space instead of pavement. It was the future, and I could see it clear as day. But not everyone in that room liked what I saw. My father sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, stone-faced. Across from me, Vanessa, his second wife, barely skimmed the numbers. She was too busy whispering to her son, Logan, my half-brother, the prodigal strategist, who couldn't read a balance sheet without a financial advisor holding his hand. They didn't even pretend to consider it. Vanessa called the idea a social experiment. Logan said, "It's not scalable, and not really on brand." Then he smirked at me like I was pitching a lemonade stand. I tried to keep my voice steady. I walked them through the projected returns, the shifting market, the cities already moving in this direction. I wasn't asking them to roll the dice. I was showing them how to stay in the game. But my father didn't see a plan. He saw defiance. He leaned back in his chair, stared at me, and said, "You've always had a good heart, Elena. But business isn't about saving the world." Then he said the words that stuck in my throat for years. "You're too idealistic. You're not cut out for this." I don't remember what I said next. Only that my voice was shaking, and I hated that it was. I walked out before I cried. Out of the boardroom, out of the company, out of his world. 2 weeks later, I booked a one-way ticket to Sydney. I didn't tell anyone, I just left. I didn't want to prove them wrong out of spite. I wanted to prove myself right. In Australia, I started from zero. No family name, no safety net, no boardroom connections, just an idea and fire. I built my firm on transparency, impact, and sharp execution. I didn't just take on clients, I taught them how to think long-term. Within 3 years, I was advising real estate firms across the Asia-Pacific. By year 5, I was turning down deals I would have killed for in the beginning. The money came. The recognition followed. But I didn't chase headlines. I chased the work. Still, every so often, I'd look up Foster and Vale in the news, just to see, just to know. I watched from half a world away as Logan was handed the innovator label for projects I knew he hadn't dreamed up. I saw Vanessa take on a VP title she didn't earn. I saw my father's empire evolve, but never change. He never reached out. Neither did I. I kept telling myself it didn't matter, that I was past it, above it. But the truth is, I never stopped caring. I just stopped hoping. Once, maybe 2 years in, I got a letter, handwritten, from my father. It was 1 page long, neat, formal, cold. He wrote, "I hope you've found whatever it is you were looking for. I still believe you were wrong, but I don't wish you harm." No apology, no warmth. Just an assessment, like he was signing off on a quarterly report. I didn't respond. After that, the silence stretched longer. Family birthdays came and went. I missed funerals, weddings, new babies. I watched from the outside as my family closed ranks and carried on like I was a distant memory. But here's what they didn't know. I never stopped building. I never stopped preparing. Because some part of me always suspected the day would come when I'd need to walk back through that door. Not as a daughter, not even as a foster, but as someone who earned her seat. That day came sooner than I expected. When I heard about my father's death, I felt hollow, not broken, not angry, just emptied out. Like I'd been carrying a question mark inside me for so long, and now there would never be an answer. He died in his sleep, they said. No drama, just silence. And then came the real blow. The will reading. The list I wasn't on. It didn't sting in the way it used to. I didn't cry. I didn't get drunk or call anyone to vent. I just opened the file I'd been keeping in a locked cabinet. The one with the charter, the signatures, the ownership chain. My quiet insurance policy. That's the thing about exile. It can be a curse or a crucible. Mine forged something they hadn't counted on. While they were maneuvering for inheritance, I was building leverage. While they erased my name, I was planting it somewhere harder to uproot. And while they bet everything on loyalty and bloodlines, I bet on something stronger. Myself. So when I walked into that boardroom last week with the corporate charter in my hand, I didn't come for revenge. I came to reclaim the truth. They told me I wasn't family. But they forgot. I was still legacy. It was raining that night in Sydney. Not the polite drizzle we usually get, but a full downpour. The kind that drowns the city in silver and makes every streetlight shimmer like a warning. I was in my office, finishing a late pitch deck, when my phone buzzed. Voicemail. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something, some gut pull, made me press play. Elena, it's Darren Black. I don't know if you still check this number. I just thought you should know. Gregory passed last night. Heart failure. Quiet. The will's being read this Friday in New York. Look, I doubt Vanessa will invite you. Just thought you deserved a heads up. Take care. I sat there, staring at the wall, the rain hitting the windows like static. Gregory. Gone. For a long time, I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't breathe too deeply. It felt unreal. Like hearing the death of someone you once knew but no longer recognized. Someone you hadn't spoken to in years, but whose name still lived in your bloodstream. And Darren Black. The man who used to call me kiddo in boardroom meetings when no one else would acknowledge I had a voice. My father's CFO. Loyal to a fault, but not blind. If he was calling me, something was off. He said I wouldn't be invited, and he was right. No call from the family, no email, no message, not even a generic press release in my inbox. I closed my laptop, grabbed my phone, and booked a flight to New York. Not for revenge, not even for a confrontation. I told myself I just wanted closure. A quiet seat in the back of the room. A final page turned. But that wasn't the whole truth. On the flight over, I kept thinking about the last time I saw him, my father. We had argued bitterly, but there was something in his eyes that night. Something more than anger. Fear, maybe. Our pride warped into disappointment. I never figured it out. Now, I never would. I landed in New York 3 days later. Everything felt colder, grayer, even for winter. The city had never felt like home, even when I lived there. It had always been his city. The morning of the will reading, I stood in front of the Foster and Vale building for a long time. The tower loomed above me like a monument to a man who never knew how to love softly. It was steel and glass and reputation. But it was also mine, in a way none of them could see yet. I took the elevator up to the executive floor. The same floor where I'd once pitched the project that fractured everything. The doors opened with that soft ding, and suddenly I was 27 again, standing in my old heels, holding plans no one wanted to hear. Only this time, I wasn't asking for approval. I had the charter. I had the papers. I had the leverage. But still, my heart was pounding. The room was already full. Vanessa, dressed in flawless black, eyes dry. Logan beside her, tapping at his phone like he was bored. My uncles, aunts, a few board members. And at the end of the long mahogany table, a lawyer I didn't recognize, flipping through a thick folder. The second I walked in, the temperature dropped. Vanessa didn't even flinch. Logan looked up, blinked, and gave me that same smug half-smile. Like I was an interruption. Like I was still the girl who didn't know her place. "Elena," he said, all casual venom. Bit of a surprise. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I just placed the corporate charter on the table. Neatly, firmly. "I'm not here for drama," I said. "I'm here because I have a legal right to be." No one said a word. The lawyer scanned the document, eyebrows rising just enough to confirm what I already knew. I belonged in that room. As he began reading the will, I let my eyes drift to the window. Same skyline, same city. But everything had changed. My father was gone. And the kingdom he built was about to realize he hadn't left it to the loyal, the obedient, or the entitled. He left it to the strongest player left on the board. The house didn't look like home anymore. As the town car pulled through the gates of the Foster estate in Connecticut, I barely recognized the place. The hedges were manicured like something out of a luxury catalog. The driveway repaved. The old willow tree, my mother's favorite, gone. In its place was a minimalist water feature, all sharp edges and soulless symmetry. The house itself, it had been gutted and redesigned. Modern, sterile, and cold. Like someone had tried to erase any trace of the people who once lived there and replace them with a lifestyle brand. The ghosts were gone, or buried. I stepped out of the car, heels crunching softly against gravel, and stared at the front door. Same location, different energy. This wasn't the house I grew up in. This was Vanessa's house now, and she made sure it showed. She opened the door herself, wearing black satin and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Elena," she said, voice syrupy and sharp. "How unexpected." I ignored the bait. "I came for the reading." Her smile didn't falter. "Of course you did, though it's a private event." For family, I raised an eyebrow. "I am family." She tilted her head, mock sympathy written across her face like stage makeup. "Well, the official guest list was limited to recognized heirs. I'm sure you understand." There it was. The velvet-gloved dagger. She wasn't going to cause a scene. She wanted me to walk away, quietly, discreetly, forgotten. I took a breath. Not anger, control. That was the key now. "I understand," I said. "Completely." I turned and walked down the front steps without looking back. But the truth was burning in my chest. This wasn't about grief. This was about control. About Vanessa tightening her grip on the empire Gregory left behind. And I was a variable she couldn't afford. I didn't need to be inside that house to know something was wrong. It wasn't just the remodel. It wasn't just the missing tree or the polished stone replacing wood floors that once creaked under my bare feet. It was how quickly they moved to shut me out. How calm she was. How calculated. This wasn't a grieving widow. This was a woman executing a plan. And that plan didn't have room for me. As I walked toward the Blacktown car waiting at the end of the drive, I passed one of the new garden installations, abstract steel sculpture, grotesquely expensive and emotionally hollow. My mother used to keep wild lavender in that corner of the lawn, said it made the place feel less like a museum. Now it was exactly that, a cold monument. Back in the car, I stared out the window as the house disappeared behind trees and fog. I kept thinking about that phrase. Recognized heirs. That wasn't legal language. That was personal. She was sending a message. This inheritance wasn't about the will. It was about who she deemed worthy. And if Vanessa thought I'd roll over just because I wasn't handed an invitation, she'd clearly forgotten who I am. You can't erase legacy with a coat of paint. You can't rewrite bloodlines with paperwork. And you definitely don't shut someone out of their own home without a reason. Back at my hotel in Manhattan, I pulled out my laptop and opened the files I'd been collecting. I hadn't come unarmed. I had documentation, quiet shares, forgotten subsidiaries, a paper trail that would make a forensic accountant sweat. But more than that, I had instincts. Something about the timeline didn't sit right. Gregory had always been deliberate, obsessive even. He didn't make casual decisions, and yet, here he was, dead, with a will that conveniently ignored me, and a wife acting like she was already the queen of the castle. Too clean, too perfect. I started digging, emails, public records, tax filings. I went deep. Nights blurred into mornings, coffee into wine. I didn't sleep much, didn't want to. The more I found, the more obvious it became. Vanessa had been preparing for this moment long before Gregory died, reshuffling assets, pressuring the board, positioning Logan to inherit the CEO seat, despite his complete lack of experience. But here's what she didn't know. Gregory was paranoid, always had been. He didn't trust anyone, not fully, not even her. And in the deep recesses of my documents, buried under outdated spreadsheets and quarterly reports, I found something. A clause. One that wasn't filed with the rest of the estate documents. One that wasn't meant to be seen yet. It was handwritten, tucked into an old contract from years ago. A contingency plan. If Elena Foster holds verified ownership in any division at the time of my death, she is entitled to a full board review before final succession. He hadn't trusted them, and he hadn't forgotten me. The clause wasn't in the official will, but it was binding because he signed it, witnessed, legal. And now it was mine. So no, I wasn't walking away. I wasn't mourning in silence. They thought they could lock the doors behind me. What they didn't realize was I'd already built another entrance. The house in Connecticut may no longer be my home, but the legacy, that's still mine. And I'm just getting started. The guest room smelled different. Sterile. Cold. It used to smell like cedar and old books. My books. But now the shelves were stripped, the sheets bleached of memory, and the walls repainted some lifeless shade of beige. The room didn't just look unlived in, it looked erased. But I stayed. I told the housekeeper I needed a place to collect my things. She didn't argue. Maybe she recognized me. Maybe she didn't care. I didn't plan on staying long. I just wanted one last look. Closure, I told myself. Instead, I found a beginning. I ran my fingers along the bookshelf, one of the few things they hadn't thrown out. Most of the titles were gone, replaced with generic decor, vases, candles, books with blank spines. But tucked at the far edge, behind a fake plant, was a single volume I recognized instantly. Atlas Shrugged, my father's favorite. And once mine, until it became a source of arguments, I was too tired to win. He gave me that copy when I turned 16, said I'd appreciate it one day. I pulled it down. The leather cover was still worn from the years I carried it in my college bag, but it felt heavier than I remembered. I opened it, and something slipped out. An envelope. No name. Just taped shut with that deliberate precision that screamed Gregory Foster. I looked around the room, then sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. Inside was a key, and a letter. Not typed, handwritten, every stroke deliberate. Elena, if you're reading this, they've shut you out. But I never did. Not truly. You and I, we didn't always see eye to eye. But I never stopped watching. Never stopped hoping. There's something you need to see. Something I couldn't trust anyone else with. Not Vanessa, not the board, not even Darren. Go to locker 307 at Seabrook Bank. You'll find everything there. Do what you do best. Think for yourself. Dad. I stared at the page until my hands stopped trembling. Seabrook Bank. He'd kept something hidden. Not in the will, not in the corporate filings, in a safe deposit box where no one could tamper with it. No lawyers, no stepfamily, no false heirs. He planned for this, for me. Suddenly, every detail of the estate, the remodel, the plastic smiles, the fake heir lists, snapped into focus. Vanessa wasn't just protecting a fortune, she was hiding a secret. And now I had a map. I left the house without saying a word to anyone. No dramatic exit, no slammed doors, just the key in my pocket and a storm building behind my ribs. Seabrook was 2 hours away, in a coastal town we used to visit when I was a kid. My father loved the quiet there, said it cleared his head. I remember asking once why he kept accounts at a local branch when he had private banks in the city. Because not everything worth protecting belongs in skyscrapers, he told me. I never understood what he meant until now. I drove alone, no calls, no distractions. Just the open road, the hum of the engine, and my pulse climbing every mile closer. When I arrived, the bank looked exactly how I remembered it. Small, sturdy, the kind of place that had probably never changed its locks. I walked in and handed over the key. The woman at the desk blinked, then checked a list, then nodded. I'll escort you. The box was old, heavy, brass-edged. When she left me alone in the vault, I sat on the little bench, took a breath, and opened it. Inside was a leather folder, thick and weathered, filled with documents, original shares, personal letters, and memos signed by my father. At the top was a notarized declaration, a contingency trust, one that named me sole executor if certain conditions were met. The conditions? Any attempt to oust or discredit a legal blood heir. He knew Vanessa, knew what she'd try. And he had written a failsafe, one that couldn't be edited, buried, or lost. At the bottom of the folder was a flash drive, labeled, "For Elena, truth first." I didn't know what was on it yet. Not exactly. But I knew one thing as I left that vault. My father didn't shut me out. He'd left me the blueprint. Now it was up to me to decide what to do with it. Back at my hotel, I locked the door, killed the lights, and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. I was expecting spreadsheets, legalese, a pile of technical proof I'd have to decode. But the screen blinked to life, and there he was. My father, Gregory Foster. Not the titan, not the public figure with the perfect tie knot and sharper tongue. Just him. A little older, tired, seated behind his old mahogany desk, the one from his home office, the one I used to crawl under as a kid while he worked. The video started. "Elena," he said, clearing his throat. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone." Which means they did what I always suspected they might do. Cut you out. He paused, looked away for a second. I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not power, not anger, regret. You were right. About the housing projects, about the world changing. I didn't see it then. Or maybe I just didn't want to. I was too proud, too afraid of being wrong, and I pushed you out because you scared me. That stopped me cold. My father, scared of me? But I watched what you built. quietly, from a distance. I even had Darren send me reports under another name. I read every article, every pitch deck. You didn't just survive, Elena. You led. He leaned forward, voice lower now. I never said this when it mattered, but I was proud of you. I still am. I didn't realize I was crying until I saw the blur on the screen. Then he got to the part that changed everything. A few years ago, I started moving things. Quietly, legally, out of reach from Vanessa, Logan, the board, everyone. The Foster Legacy Trust now holds all controlling shares of Foster and Vale Holdings. You, Elena, are its sole trustee. I froze. Did he just say? He kept going. Inside that box are the documents, deeds, transfers, contracts, all airtight, all notarized. There's a revised copy of the company's bylaws, too. Effective immediately upon my death, the acting CEO becomes the trustee of the Foster Legacy Trust. That means you. I sat back in my chair. Breath caught in my throat. Controlling shareholder. Acting CEO. He didn't just leave me a seat at the table. He handed me the table. I know it won't be easy. They'll fight you. Vanessa always did play the long game, and Logan, well, he never did know the value of earning something. But I built this company to last. You're the only one who sees beyond the next quarter, who understands that legacy isn't just money, it's responsibility. Make it better than I did. Then, softer. Take it back, Elena. It was always yours. The screen faded to black. I sat in silence for what felt like hours. I must have watched the video 3 more times just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. Then I opened the leather folder again, hands steady this time. There they were. Documents signed and dated years ago. Transfers of asset ownership to the Foster Legacy Trust. Real estate portfolios. Equity stakes. Intellectual property. All shifted away from the holding company and locked under trust protection. And my name was on every page. Sole trustee. At the bottom of the stack, clipped to a revised charter, was a notarized copy of the new bylaws. Clean, legal, bulletproof. Gregory Foster had rewritten the future and handed me the pen. I wasn't just back in the game. I was the game. And Vanessa, Logan, the entire board, they had no idea. All this time, they thought they were executing a clean succession. Grooming Logan for the top seat, brushing me off as the exiled daughter with too much heart and not enough muscle. But they were playing checkers. My father had been playing chess. And now I had checkmate in my pocket. The next morning, I got dressed like it was war. Tailored blazer, no jewelry, hair up, no distractions. I walked into Foster and Vale headquarters without an appointment. No warning, no entourage. Just me and a folder. Vanessa was mid-meeting when I stepped into the executive wing. She turned, startled, then furious. "You can't just walk in," she started. I placed the revised bylaws on the table. Quietly, her mouth opened, then closed. I didn't need to raise my voice. "I can do more than walk in," I said. Effective immediately, I'm reinstating myself as acting CEO, as controlling shareholder, as trustee of the Foster Legacy Trust. The board members in the room looked at each other like I'd detonated a bomb, which, to be fair, I had. She reached for the document, scanning it with shaking hands. She knew. The notary seals, the dates, my father's signature. It was real. "You forged this," she whispered, though she already knew better. I stared her down. "You spent the last 6 years erasing me," I said. "But my father didn't. He spent them protecting me from you." Then I turned to the room. "Meeting's over. There's a new agenda now." I didn't wait for applause. I didn't need it. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what should have never been stolen. The legacy wasn't in a vault. It was in me, and I was done watching from the outside. They didn't expect me to show up. The will reading was held in a private conference room at our family's law firm, a slick downtown office with too much marble and not enough soul. Logan and Vanessa were already seated when I walked in, unannounced and uninvited. The room froze. Vanessa turned her head slowly, like she was trying to decide whether I was real or just an inconvenience her money couldn't vaporize. Logan looked up from his phone, gave me a quick smirk, then glanced at the attorney as if to say, "Handle this." "Elena," Vanessa said, voice brittle with sugar, "this is a private legal matter. You don't belong here." I didn't sit. I didn't even flinch. "I think I do," I said, cool and even. "Let's hear what my father had to say." Their attorney, a gray-haired man with thin glasses and a folder so thick it looked like it had been sweating for weeks, shifted uncomfortably. "I was told this reading was for recognized beneficiaries only," he said. I gave him a look that sliced through the room. "If Gregory Foster's will is about to be read, and I'm mentioned in it, then legally, I have every right to be here." He hesitated, then nodded. "Fair enough." I took a seat. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Logan leaned back like this was some Netflix drama, and he was just there for the twist. The lawyer opened the folder and cleared his throat. "This is the final will and testament of Gregory Allen Foster, filed officially and notarized on record, 6 months prior to his passing." Vanessa's eyebrows shot up. She whispered something to Logan. He frowned. The lawyer continued. "To my wife, Vanessa Foster," he read, "I leave the estate residence in Connecticut and a liquid sum of $1 million. Silence. I saw the flicker of confusion in Vanessa's eyes. The number was far smaller than she expected, and she knew it. "To my son, Logan Foster, I leave $2 million and my complete art collection, including all pieces housed in our New York and Napa properties." Logan blinked. That was less than anticipated, and then the room held its breath. "To my daughter, Elena Foster," the lawyer said, his voice calm and deliberate, "I leave full ownership of Foster and Vale Holdings, including all controlling shares, assets, voting rights, and executive authority. This inheritance supersedes all prior arrangements, trusts, or transfers." The words echoed like a bell toll. Then came the sound of Vanessa losing control. "No," she snapped, standing so fast her chair screeched across the floor. "That will was voided. Gregory revoked it. This is fraud." The lawyer, unfazed, calmly flipped a tab in the folder and pulled out a second document. This copy was filed through the appropriate legal channels, signed and notarized by Mr. Foster himself on January 18th, 6 months before his passing. There is no legal evidence of revocation. She lunged toward the table, snatched the papers, scanning them as if she could will them into disappearing. Her lips moved silently, eyes darting through the pages. The panic was setting in. "You manipulated him," she hissed at me. "You came crawling back and poisoned him against us." I stood up slowly. "I hadn't spoken to my father in years when he signed that document," I said. "You shut me out. You erased me. But you forgot something. Gregory Foster didn't leave anything to chance." Logan slammed his palm on the table. "You don't deserve it. You weren't there. We were. We handled everything. We were the ones keeping the company running." I looked him dead in the eye. You were draining it. Positioning yourself for a title you didn't earn. Building nothing. Just waiting. I turned back to the lawyer. "Is that all?" He nodded. "There are additional instructions regarding the transition of leadership, But yes, that concludes the primary distribution. Vanessa slumped back in her seat, lips pressed into a thin, pale line. Logan said nothing. The room felt heavier now, thick with fury, confusion, and the weight of a crown they thought would land on their heads. Instead, it landed on mine. I gathered the folder, nodded once to the lawyer, and turned to leave. At the door, I paused and looked back. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm not here to burn it all down. I'm here to rebuild it. Properly. For the future." Then I walked out, and for the first time since my father's death, I felt the full truth of it settle in my chest. He had chosen me, not out of guilt, not out of sentiment, but because at the end of everything, he knew I was the only one who could finish what he started. Not for profit, but for purpose. I didn't leave quietly. Not this time. After the will reading, I didn't go back to my hotel or hide in some corner office. I walked straight into the boardroom at Foster and Vale headquarters and called an emergency meeting. The entire board showed up, confused but curious. They thought they were coming to witness a power shift, maybe a symbolic gesture. A daughter inheriting a company too big for her. Instead, I gave them the storm. I stood at the head of the table, holding a folder that weighed more than it looked. Logan and Vanessa slithered in 10 minutes late, whispering to each other, already agitated. They didn't sit. They didn't have to. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know how bad it was going to get. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up with a string of emails. Dates, names, subjects, subject lines like revised ownership structure proposal, private meeting, board strategy post GF, Q3 transfer to Vanguard, URGENT. I let it hang in silence. Then I said it flatly. Vanessa and Logan attempted to stage a corporate coup while my father was dying of cancer. The room went still. Even the HVAC hum felt muted. I walked them through it, one email at a time. Documents leaked from Logan's private account, forwarded to a now-fired assistant who didn't scrub the metadata. Memos between Vanessa and 2 board members, since removed, pressuring them to support a succession restructuring. A PDF of a draft amendment to the corporate charter that would quietly remove Gregory as the sole controlling shareholder, dated 3 weeks after his diagnosis. And then the kill shot. Bank records showing payments from an offshore shell company tied to Vanguard East Developers, our biggest regional rival. Vanessa and Logan sold internal Foster and Vale development data, locations, blueprints, permits, months before Gregory died. Logan stood up. "This is nonsense, fabricated. This is nothing but a smear job." I didn't flinch. "You forwarded the internal Q4 pipeline to a Vanguard alias using your personal email, then asked your assistant to delete the thread. She didn't. She sent it to her own drive. For leverage." Vanessa tried to speak, but the lawyer we'd all been ignoring until now finally stood. He cleared his throat, pulled his glasses down, and said, "Under Section 12 of the company bylaws, any board member who engages in acts of sabotage, collusion with competitors, or coercion of governance structures may be removed with immediate effect and may be subject to civil liability." He paused, looking directly at them. "That includes both of you." You could hear the blood draining from their faces. Logan laughed, but it came out hollow. "You think you can just erase us?" I stepped forward, voice steady. "Number you did that. I'm just bringing it into the light." The board began murmuring. Directors whispering behind hands, glancing at one another, putting together the same picture I had already framed. Vanessa's calm started to crack. "Gregory didn't even tell you about the trust until after he died. This is all reactive, emotional. You're a child playing CEO." I stepped closer to her. close enough she had to meet my eyes. "No, Vanessa, I'm the woman your husband trusted to finish what he started, and you're the one he never gave the keys to." I turned to the lawyer. "Is there any legal standing for them to retain their board seats?" He shook his head. Their privileges are suspended pending further investigation." Security didn't need to be called. They knew it was over. Logan stormed out first, slamming the door behind him. Vanessa followed, shoulders stiff, eyes burning. But she didn't say a word. Because now she knew. I wasn't just fighting back. I had already won. After they were gone, I took a breath and turned to the board. "You wanted leadership," I said. "You've got it. This company is going to change, not with deception, not with short-term greed, but with long-term vision, the kind Gregory finally saw before it was too late." I paused. "We don't just build properties. We build futures. That's our new legacy." And for the first time, no one in that room doubted it. Because they'd just watched me dismantle the coup they thought I'd never see coming. And I did it without raising my voice. Only the truth. Taking over Foster and Vale wasn't the victory lap people assumed it would be. It wasn't applause and champagne. It was 4 a.m. emails, canceled deals, and walking into offices full of people who still thought I didn't belong there. But I didn't come to be liked. I came to rebuild. First, I froze everything. Every pending sale, every land auction, every backroom handshake Logan had made in the shadows. Half the board gasped. The other half quietly exhaled. Then I started digging. I reinstated a dozen staffers who'd been forced out under Vanessa's streamlining initiative. People my father once trusted. People who kept the company honest, even when it was inconvenient. I brought back Darren Black. He walked into my office the next day, looked around, and said, "Never thought I'd see you at this desk." "You're not here to see," I told him. "You're here to help run it." I named him Chief Operating Officer on the spot. No vote needed. He didn't smile, just nodded. That was enough. Then I unveiled the plan I'd been holding on to for years, the one they all once called foolish, idealistic. I called it the Green Roots Initiative. We would take Gregory's outdated suburban holdings, the strip malls, the empty lots, the shells of what once made sense, and turn them into mixed-use communities. Green housing, solar grids, communal gardens, accessible rent, real partnerships with local governments. It wasn't charity. It was smart business in a world that was shifting under our feet. There was resistance. Of course there was. Investors grumbled. A few shareholders threatened to walk. Let them. I wasn't building the old empire. I was building the future. Piece by piece, Foster and Vale began to change. We started in Pennsylvania, broke ground on a pilot site 3 weeks after I took the reins, then another in Arizona, then Melbourne, where it all started for me. Every community we built had a name pulled from my father's journals. He never showed them to anyone, but I'd found them in that same safety deposit box. A man full of regret scribbling down ideas he never thought he could realize. Now, I would. And every groundbreaking wasn't just for the business. It was for both of us. For the daughter who had to walk away to be heard, and for the father who took too long to listen, but listened in the end. I didn't come back to take a throne. I came back to make good on a promise, to do what he couldn't. And now we're just getting started. It was a rainy Thursday when she showed up. I had just finished back-to-back meetings when my assistant knocked, hesitated, and said, "There's someone here. Says she has something personal about Gregory Foster." I almost told them to send her away, but something in her tone made me pause. A few minutes later, I was staring across my office at a woman maybe a few years younger than me. Calm, steady-eyed. She held a small folder in her hands like it weighed 100 pounds. "My name is Alyssa Chen," she said, "and I think we're sisters." I didn't speak. Couldn't. She sat down, opened the folder, and slid over 2 documents: a DNA test and a handwritten letter. My father's handwriting was unmistakable. "Elena, if you're reading this, I've failed again. Alyssa is my daughter, from before your mother. I never told you, never told her the full truth. I wanted to bring her into the fold, but time got away from me. Please, don't shut her out. She's more like you than you think." I stared at the words for a long time, then at Alyssa. "I didn't come here for money," she said quickly. "I didn't even know about the company until after the funeral. I just wanted answers." And somehow, I believed her. She wasn't polished like Vanessa or slick like Logan. She wasn't playing a game. There was no angle, just truth. Over the next few hours, we talked, really talked, about her life, mine, our shared confusion, and all the damage Gregory had left behind. Not out of malice, but fear. Of what? Maybe of vulnerability. Maybe of losing control. But this time, I wasn't going to let his silence define another relationship. So I made a decision. "You said you wanted to make a difference," I told her. "You said you believe in people, in places being more than profit." She nodded. "Then come work with me, head of community outreach." She blinked. "Seriously?" I nodded. "Let's build something together, from both sides of the family." That was 3 months ago. Now, Alyssa's become the face of the Green Roots Initiative. She connects with people in a way I never could, openly, disarmingly, without armor. Where I draw the blueprint, she brings it to life. We don't always agree. We argue. We push each other. But there's no competition, no rivalry. Just this strange, beautiful truth. I didn't just reclaim a company. I found a sister. And in a legacy built on silence and separation, we're rewriting the rules with honesty, unity, and one clear purpose: build something better. Together. 1 year later, I stood on a stage overlooking a stretch of green that used to be an abandoned warehouse district. Now it was Foster Park,